So, the people's down to Fox News said that critical race theory is really just junk science. Is that true? Is America really a racist country, y'all? Isn't isn't critical race theory just something else being used to fuel the racial divide and further separate people? We're talking about it after the break.
Brokers, welcome to another episode of Brokers, where we talk about the unbelievable ish this country has done to keep us broke. Now, here are your hosts, Amber and Erika.
Hey, brokers, I'm Amber.
And I'm Erika.
And this payday, we're talking about everybody's favorite topic of the moment, y'all, critical race theory.
Amber, I can't even let you get through these silly ass questions when you talking about, is America really a racist country? Well,
I mean, we
who
don't
are you,
know.
Kamala? Are you Kamala over there saying, no, America's not a racist country at all? Are
Well,
you?
Jim Clyburn don't think it is either.
Oh, of
So,
course not. Of
you
course
know,
not.
I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, let me stop. Okay. So, Amber, before we actually get into the meat of the show, which is not to question whether America is a racist country, because brokers, we know that it is. That was purely a rhetorical question. Before we jump into that, let's talk about our last show where we got to talk to our editor and friend, Jen Kinney. And Jen talked to us about anti racism and what it means to be an ally, but not in that old tired, overused way that is just so common these days. Jen shared with us how she really does literally put her money where her mouth is and gave us examples that really make room to elevate the voices of Black women and other underrepresented folks. So, shout out to Jen for hanging with us on the last episode. So, Amber, I am so glad to be talking to you about this today because if I hear critical race theory or CRT one more time, I'm going to explode. I looked at an article today that said in a single week, Fox News talked about critical race theory more than 100 times, and it's been mentioned hundreds of times in the last 6 months. It's ridiculous.
Y'all, we are a nation of critical race theory experts. We are a nation of experts. So I am just so glad that we have become experts on such a weighty topic. You know, a group of Americans who don't even believe that racists exist. You know, people who back the blue, who voted to elect Donald J. Trump are now kitchen table critical race theorists. Come on
But
and shout for joy.
that's why it's so fascinating, because there really has been this tsunami of everything anti-critical race theory. But the part that's interesting for me is that nobody ever defines it. Whenever there are people on these shows, and like I watched the clip from, you probably saw it from Mark Lamont Hill's show, which I actually don't think made Mark look that good. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. But anyway, he had this Black Republican on the show, and Mark was like, well, can you just define what critical race theory, can you just give me an example of it? And people can't give examples of it. They can't define it. And I count myself as people. In this case, I'm people. And that's why I'm glad to have you here to help explain to the brokers, what is it? Because I feel like it's, when teenagers talk about sex, don't nobody really know what it is. Everybody say they doing it, but don't nobody really know. Like, what's going on?
But they can't define it because they too busy banning it, child. We ain't got time to define it. We trying to ban it, baby. We trying
Yeah,
to ban it.
but
Okay?
it's so, how do you ban a thing that you haven't defined? Okay, so Amber, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Tell the brokers your ratchet lawyer definition of a broker layperson's term of what is critical race theory.
So let's start in the history, okay? So let me give you some context so you can understand it when I tell you what it is. Let's start with the civil rights movement and the people working to desegregate, right?
Okay.
So we remember, our Martin Luther Kings and all of that, right? So we got the people doing our lunch counter sit-ins, right? We
Yes.
got our Montgomery bus boycott people.
Mm-hmm.
And we have people working within this framework, right, that assumes that we can use the law as a tool to advocate for equality, right? And if we use the law to advocate for racial equality, that the treating of Black and white people the same was the means to the end, right? And those people assumed that that was like the golden prize, that desegregating was the golden prize. Like that if we got Black people into the white schools, if we got to
Sure.
eat in the white restaurants, if we got to sit by them on buses, if we got to live in their neighborhoods, that if we were treated the same as them, then we would be winning. And once like Brown versus Board of Education happened, once other judicial rulings came down, like desegregating um, bus terminals, ending the legal restrictive covenants in the selling of houses that made it legal to uh, restrict Black people from buying homes from white people. Black people realize, like, actually, that is not the prize because putting Black kids in white schools doesn't create equality. Hello, Ruby Bridges,
No.
right? Putting Black people in white neighborhoods doesn't lead to this utopia. So that was the first time we
Sure.
realized, like, damn, maybe we got Wookiee. And so then there were people like Derek Bell, Professor Derek Bell from Harvard, who were like, okay, so maybe we got to go deeper than this. Maybe judicial intervention, right, is not enough because maybe the problem is the law itself. Okay. So maybe using the law to fight for equality isn't enough because perhaps the law is racist, right?
No,
Yes,
Amber.
yes, right, right. So there were Black scholars who started to interrogate the system, who started to question the system itself, right? Who started to question the idea of whether you could fight within the system to achieve equality and started to say, okay, so if you can't fight within the system to achieve equality, perhaps the problem is the system itself. Perhaps there is something baked in the system that makes the system itself problematic. So you had people like Derek Bell, you had people like Alan Freeman, excuse me. You had people like Kimberly Crenshaw, you had people like Mary Matsuda, who started taking these more broader philosophical ideas like nothing is created in a bubble. All things are constructed by people. So law is not just created. Laws are created by people. And
So the racist nature of America automatically gets translated, or the laws are automatically translated through the racist nature of America, and thereby it's impossible for us to separate how the laws impact Black people differently because of how they're created and just the system itself.
exactly. So you have to interrogate the system itself by looking at the society that the system is born from, right? So justice isn't born in a bubble. You got to look at the society that defines what justice is, right? So you that means that you got to look at that's why we look at the Bible differently now so that we come to know now that things like child brides, we look at that differently now, right? Because the idea of what
Sure.
was normative then is different than what's normative now. And so ideas of consent have evolved now, right? So ideas of what forms consenting marriage is different now. And so those things were taken by scholars like Dr. Derek Bell and say, okay, so that means that we got to look at this system and we got to look at the people who created this system and say that The system itself is belying a color blindness. You got documents like the Declaration of Independence. You got documents like the Constitution. And when we uncover those documents, what we see is that the color blindness that's on the surface is not true. And so, what we have
No.
to do is we have to disrupt the semblance of color blindness and take that out and call out the fact that there is baked into the system not a color blindness, but a racial preference that is preferential towards whites to the detriment of blacks. And that's what critical race theory says. It basically disrupts the semblance of race neutrality that we propagandize into our system.
So, Amber, as I've just been doing, just a little bit of reading about critical race theory, right? As I'm sure many people have, as it's bubbled to sort of this national consciousness, I hear a lot of it, like you said, like I hear a lot of it having its origins in sort of like legal environments and law school and all of that. But, as a person who went to undergrad and graduate school, I'd never been exposed to the idea of critical race theory. Now I study business, so I'm just like, okay, maybe it's because I studied business. But as I'm learning more, I'm hearing that critical race theory isn't even something that really is available to most people who are studying, except if they're doing so probably on a graduate or postgraduate level. So, why do you think there is now this mass wave of we've got to ban the boogeyman of critical race theory?
Well,
When they're not even teaching it, it's not a K-12 taught topic anyway, right? None of our kids are being exposed to critical race theory.
no, critical race theory is not a K through 12 subject at all. It's really not even something that probably is taught in most graduate level studies. As you mentioned, what is being done now, A, is political
No.
to appease a certain sect, but also um, it conflates critical race theory with Black history. So, first of all, it really is a mask to
Yes.
ban the teaching of Black history. Critical race theory is not Black history. And a lot of,
But here's the part, let me just jump in for 1 second. When you say Black history, this shit ain't Black history. This shit is just good old United States of America
yes,
history, right? Like,
yes,
we're not talking about, to me, it feels like a move to ban the fact that, oh, there were lynchings. Oh, slavery really happened. And it was not this benevolent thing of white people taking care of us and giving us a place to live. So, anyway,
that's exactly what, but it is an intentional effort to propagandize American history, to whitewash and to erase the dirty, genocidal parts of American
sure.
history. That's what it is. Because critical race theory ain't been taught in American schools, public K through 12, ever at any point in time. Critical race theory did not emerge as an part of academic lexicon until the 80s. Honestly, it emerged as protest lexicon in the 80s when Derek Bell was fired from Harvard. The students at Harvard Law School asked for the Harvard Law School to replace him with another Black professor. And Harvard came back and said, well, there aren't enough qualified Black
Of
legal
course.
professors to replace him with. And what the students brought up and said, well, because think about it, you guys are defining merit within a system that is neutral towards things that are inconsiderate of a history that ignores the fact that Black people have largely been shut out of the things that you evaluate: Supreme Court clerkships, access to large law firms, access to elite lawsuits, to elite law schools for a large part of the history of this country, for the history of this country. So for a long time, basically merit is synonymous with racism. So these are coded words. So critical race theory really emerged around a conversation about meritocracy and professionalism in the context of excuses being put out around why there weren't Black professors who possess certain things that are associated with elite professorships, right?
So you exclude us and then you gaslight us by telling us there aren't enough of y'all, and it's because you excluded. So there's like this circular logic that's happening in the
Exactly. And so
background.
the students were basically saying, you can't tell us that Black professors aren't qualified because they haven't been Supreme Court clerks or they haven't worked in elite law firms when they couldn't do it, right? So, you know, the thing about critical race theory is this idea that we have to interrogate the system itself. And so the interesting thing about this ban that has come up, or this idea that people are critical of a theory that essentially teaches us that there is an intersection between right race and gender and poverty and other things that we put in hierarchy that we use to categorize and oppress people, that we basically have to look at those systems and ask ourselves, how do those things work in tandem within the systems we create? That's all critical race theory is asking us to evaluate. How do those things work in tandem? And so when we ask ourselves those questions, we really have to look at the fact that the system is created by people who are biased by the hierarchies that they benefit from, right? There were a bunch of
Sure,
white
sure.
men who created those systems. So they were at the top of the hierarchies. And so,
So why do I want to upset my apple cart?
correct.
Right? If I'm them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that is just a thing to be mindful of, that they created systems that they would benefit from.
So Amber, I feel like with previous generations of white people, they were there, right? Like they were able to see Nana frying chicken and then carrying the whole family down to watch a lynching happen, right? Like they were able to see in real life these things happening. And now, so much of the racism that we encounter is systemic and it's not, you know, Nana at the lynching, right? It is just different. And so, without these things being taught in school, without the history being taught in school, I think we are detached from that part of our past. And I think it makes the possibility of understanding systemic racism less likely. I I feel like people, and maybe I'm being idealistic here, I feel like people can maybe start to understand systemic racism if they understand the initial roots from which we come. But without a connection to those roots in terms of the history that's being taught in schools, because we know none of us are teaching our kids like we need to at home, we're relying on the schools to do that, it just gets lost.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also there is a truth about our country, about the virtue myth that we propagate, that we don't want to let go of. And
Yeah,
so, because of that, we hold dear these false narratives that our children are learning in school, and that makes it harder for them to spot the shortcomings in our legal system. It makes it harder for them to spot the weaknesses in our political system. It makes it harder for them to see the ways that our media and our journalists are biased, and the cycle just perpetuates. It's interesting because A few months ago, I posted a thread on my.
Something controversial?
No,
Amber, are you on Facebook getting banned again or
no, it was just facts. I
okay.
posted about theft and the difference between wage theft and criminal theft, and how it really is an example that points to the validity of critical race theory, and one of the reasons why we need to interrogate the system, because wage theft is the most prevalent type of theft in the United States. Um,
Absolutely. Come on,
when
725.
when your employer steals your wages, they get fined. If you steal a pen from your employer, or go down there and steal from the break room, and if it,
Hello,
you know,
felony.
you gonna get arrested, right? But if they steal your wages, ain't nobody getting arrested, right? And the only difference between the two is the fact that white people say it's different. The fact that white people say it's different. And wage theft is overwhelmingly committed by white corporate people, corporations,
No,
right?
not the billionaire class.
Right.
No.
Corporate billionaires overwhelmingly commit wage theft. Rich people overwhelmingly perpetrate wage theft against poor people, and they never face criminal charges. But it,
And who are mostly the poor
right,
people? Who are disproportionately the poor people, Amber?
black
Okay.
folks, right. So if Target steal your money, they get a slap on the wrist. But if you steal Target's TV, you're gonna get wrapped in a cycle of criminality, right? You're gonna get arrested. You're gonna have to hire a lawyer. You're gonna have to post bond. You're gonna have to take off time after time to go to hearing after hearing, right? And so that is part of the problem with the system. You know what I'm saying? But the dirty secret is that American constitutionalism was not created to be antagonistic to white supremacy. It was created to complement
To
and work
uplift
in
it.
tandem with white supremacy. That's the thing that we don't talk about. That's the thing we don't talk about, and we don't teach that in school, but that's the truth. And that is the thing that critical race theory affirms. And that's why these white people are mad, because that's what we are finally talking about. That's why the students at Harvard were protesting in the 80s. They were like, how you gonna get mad that ain't no black law professors that are Supreme Court clerks when no white Supreme Court justices would hire black people, and black people couldn't go to law school because you wouldn't let us in until like 50 years ago. Hello. And then you say we ain't qualified because we don't got that on our resume. But you say it's a
Well,
meritocracy. Get the hell out of here.
that's the thing with I think I see so much pearl clutching today. Everybody is like, "Not my America, not my America." And I just find out there are so many grown people who don't understand the racist history of this country. Even like just all of this very explicit forms of racism. People just don't understand that this has happened. And then they're all like, "Oh my gosh, the system could not be racist. Hello, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And yes, Jim Clyburn." It's just so convenient how we just people can turn their heads on literal things that happen because of checks that they get or opportunities that they now have. And this is just another way to sort of further distance us from the truth of the nation. And I think that it is awful. But one thing, Amber, you mentioned before about how, as an example, the way that people contextualize the Bible has changed over time as just our understanding has changed, or some people's understanding has changed, right? Whether that's from societal norms changing or just your own personal
Mm-hmm.
grappling with the text, right? But one thing that I found not exciting, but one thing that I found fascinating was I just saw this video today of our friend from the Southern Baptist
Ooh,
Convention.
child.
And it's the summertime, so they getting together.
Mm-hmm.
They're having their convention.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this motion to ban critical race theory.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a man and he's talking about how we are going to ban this critical race theory and this is awful for our children because it's going to make white children hate
Mm-hmm.
themselves, Amber.
Mm-hmm.
And he is saying not only does he want the Southern Baptist Convention to take on this fight, but apparently he's also imploring Lifeway, Christian bookstores to
Mhm,
do the same. He wants them to create curriculum
mhm,
that fights back against critical race
mhm.
theory, such that these budding young Christians are not confused by all the things that are happening. And I'm like, there ain't no trouble in America that evangelicals are not at the bottom
Come
of.
on,
Like,
come on.
what? Why are y'all always leading a charge for some foolishness? Like, Amber, help me understand why the evangelicals always in some mess.
Well, I can help you understand why they hateful, but this is very on brand. I mean, that's the same reason why they told Reagan to ban the gay people to hell and ignore the AIDS pandemic. I mean,
Well,
this is this is about power. This is not about religion. This is about power, plain and simple. This is about them wanting to create a concentration of power for whiteness. Because anytime you denigrate whiteness, you denigrate the purity of Southern Baptists. Because you cannot at all disentangle the ascendancy of white Southern Baptists without talking about the rise of whiteness and white racism and the Klan
oh,
and dirty white Confederate power. When we talk about the flip between the South as a Republican stronghold and the South becoming a Democrat stronghold, the Southern Baptists and the white racists, that they was all in that, okay? Because there was a time when the Southern Baptists, people talk about abortion and all that. There was a time when like Southern Baptist people, they were actually very sympathetic to women who were like raped, women who were the victim of like incest, and the Southern Baptists would like give women like money to get abortions, like but once they realized like that they could like jump on certain issues and like use it to get power and stuff, like all of that happened at the same time. So let me just tell you, this is all about power and it doesn't have anything to do with God. So at the same time when they started abusing abortion, abusing gay people, just openly being racist, because they always been racist, okay? But just openly abusing it, all of that happened at the same time. So like Missy, what I want to know, my question is to the black folks sitting in that convention, listening to that foolishness, sending their money there. Why y'all still there? Because I understand why the white people there. Like I understand. Y'all have to answer to the Lord for that. But to the black people still sitting there, listening to that, co-signing that foolishness, why y'all still there? That's what I want.
there must be, to the point of power, there must be some power in their local churches where they think they have by being there. I find it horrifying. Like, how could I sit and watch? And then at the end, when he finished with this whole little, with his speech, and everybody's like clapping, like, yes, yes. In my mind, I feel like they're all like, ban it, Jesus, ban it.
Y'all,
And I'm like,
mm-mm.
don't nobody know what critical race theory is in the room, and y'all talking about banning it.
But some of them
But
do though. Dwight McKissick know what critical race theory is. Brother, why is you still there? Why you ain't at the National Baptist Convention? Because you know what critical race theory is. Why is you there trying to convince them white people? Why? I want to know why is you there thinking you can talk sense into them white people? Russell Moore left. That white man said, that white man wrote a letter saying these white people calling us monkeys, talking about us. Why is you there? Why y'all there? That's all I want to know.
I don't have no good answer for you. But what I noticed though is, and I think we all notice this, in this country, wherever the rise of religious power is, there is the rise of the political power, right?
That's
Those
what it
things
is.
go hand in hand,
Yep.
right? And so, as we have folks like the folks from the Southern Baptist Convention getting together to ban critical race theory, we know starting with the Trump administration, where Trump started with his executive order to exclude, federal contracts that had any diversity and inclusion training in them, and divisive topics, right? That they consider divisive topics to be race or sex stereotyping or race or sex scapegoating. And then they consider critical race theory to be a part of that. And again, we've talked about the conflation of critical race theory with history. But now we've seen this onslaught of all of these other states jumping onto the bandwagon and them saying, okay, now we're going to ban critical race theory,
Hmm.
or now we're going to harm teachers who want to really teach our children about the history of the nation. And, I don't know how much of the things I see on Twitter are performative, things are real. But I have been seeing some educators, whether it's K-12 educators and also some professors who are not tenured, say, I'm just not literally going to be able to teach the way that I was teaching before, the truth of the history that I was teaching before, because these fools are saying stuff like the 1619 Project is critical race theory. And now we can't tell people that slavery happened in the country, or I'm going to lose my job. Or in some cases, I'm going to have to pay a fine because that's just what the legislature of my state has set up. So, what do you think about this notion of, you talked about at the beginning how this got politicized, but this is now politicized in a very real way. So the whole notion of critical race theory and looking at the laws through the lens of race, and now it's certainly being used against us in a very overt way.
Yeah, and so again, that critical race theory has been used as sort of a umbrella to cover things that white people don't want to talk about, right? So that's one of the reasons why we know that the journalists in this country are failing miserably at their job, because
Absolutely.
so many of them just aren't literally even asking the question, hey, what is critical race theory? Like, they are literally giving people a platform to sit up and trash something and talk about how terrible it is. And nobody's even asking the fundamental question. Hey, they're giving people a platform to give an opinion on something without even asking the foundational question. Hey, what is critical race theory? And to the extent that they are asking it, they are not even correcting it when people misspeak about what it is. Legislative bodies are legislating based on misinformation. And so a lot of the problem is that, like you said, people are being banned from teaching stuff that is not critical race theory. The 1619 Project is a historical project. Slavery is a historical event. The narrative of the 1619 Project recollects the first time that enslaved people were brought to the Americas. And so, really, this is about reshaping the narrative of America. These white people want to make people believe that there was virtue in their human trafficking. They want to make people believe that there was virtue in their stealing of land from indigenous people. They want to make people believe that there was virtue in the fact that they have taken billions and trillions of dollars in labor from black bodies and then built a system in inequity that continues to extract profit from that labor, and then gaslit black bodies by saying, you ain't shit and it's all your fault. You ain't shit and it's all your fault. You ain't done nothing. You're criminal. You ain't made nothing of your life and it's all your fault. You've had every opportunity in the world to be something, to do something, to pursue the American dream, and you haven't. And all you do is lay up and kill each other. And it's all your fault.
And Amber, that to me is why we come together on Brokish, right? Because I feel like so much of our lives have really been that narrative of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You could do it if you try harder. And so many of us have bought into that. And I hope that this is, if nothing else, a space where we can be like, no, this shit is broken. There's nothing wrong with us. We are not the broken ones. The system is broken and it's been broken on our backs. And we need to have a reckoning with that.
Yeah,
And if nothing else, we just want the brokers who we are sure know already know this. We want everybody to know that the reason why most of us are living like we are, the reason why our material conditions are like they are, is not because of anything that we have individually done. It's because it was meant to be that way. The film is developing per the script. It is not because of what we have done. So, Amber, thank you for helping us have some more insight into what critical race theory is. And to me, this proves a point because I'm like, this shit ain't even easy to grasp and understand. And so I'm like, we already know we weren't teaching this to our kids. None of us learned this in school, and we already know that. So all of this BS about banning it is sad because we know that there is something bigger lurking on the other side of it. We know that this is going to morph into something that I don't know what that is, but I'm not looking forward to finding out. So, Amber, tell the brokers what their homework is for this episode.
okay, y'all. We getting a class participation grade this week. Okay,
Oh gosh.
listen.
But look, just because it's not our fault don't mean you have to give people low expectations. We got to have high
No,
expectations.
no. Because listen, it is important for us, really, for real, to see how broken the system is. We need to see it for ourselves, like for real, for real. And I think this demonstration is important. So we're gonna have like a comment demonstration. So we're gonna have a conversation in the comments. I want y'all to comment on the Instagram under the post when this post about the episode goes live about what you thought critical race theory was and the first time you heard about it. And hopefully, y'all, we see the power of misinformation. Y'all, America ain't shit. The propaganda is real. The propaganda is real. And so hopefully we see the propaganda machine out here and how important it is for us to stay attuned to it. And really, hopefully this will serve as a real life demonstration of brokage. This shit is broken. And we need to see it because I think it is real easy to talk about it. We talk about it all the time. But hopefully this will serve as a real life demonstration of the fact that it's broken. So comment, y'all. Comment. What did you think critical race theory was before you listen to this episode? And where did you first hear about it? So put your comments down so your brothers and sisters can see a real life exhibit A of the American propaganda machine. So you don't have to do nothing but participate in class to get your A. So participate. Participate.
And what Amber didn't put on the homework, and Amber, I'm glad you didn't do this because I don't think this would have been good. Do not watch Fox News and do a drinking game on critical race theory because y'all gonna die. Like if you listening to them and you drinking every time they mention the word, y'all gonna be in the hospital for alcohol poisoning. So do not do that. It would be dangerous.
I'm sorry, that caught me off guard. Don't ever do that.
No. So, brokers, it seems like with each coming day, we have a new battle to wage in this country. The collective gathering during the summer of 2020 is now for so many of us this distant memory. And now we're fighting a war to ensure that our history as the primary builders of this society isn't forgotten, rewritten, or stolen from right before our eyes. We have to use our positions as community members, citizens, and voters to register our disgust over how critical race theory has been used in a sleight of hand. Our history should be highlighted within the larger US historical context, and our ancestors should haunt us if we allow the things that they went through to not even be a footnote within the education that is offered to the children, all the children in this country. Shame on us if we allow white supremacists to take away what they fought for. If we want to even think about being our ancestors' wildest dreams, and y'all need to stop with that. But anyway, if we want to even think about it, we can't let a dismissal of this magnitude happen. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of Brokish.
All right, good people. Thanks for listening to Brokish. For more episodes, visit us at brokish.com or subscribe, and Brokish will get direct deposited into your favorite podcast app on the 1st and 15th. Share Brokish with your friends and join the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Music for Brokish is Come Get Some by Blank and Kit. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.